Your degree is from a community college, Alan said, loud enough for the entire sales floor to hear. We need executives with pedigree, Marcus. You understand. I had just closed a $90 million deal that morning. I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because I'd already said everything I needed to. In the contract I signed at 9:04 a.m. He slid the termination letter across the glass table. We'll need your keycard and laptop before you leave the building. Vanessa from HR watched without blinking. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. This wasn't about policy. It was theater, and I was the closing act. My name is Marcus Hale, 42. Until this morning, I was Senior Vice President of Strategic Accounts at Argent Bridge Capital. For 11 years, I was the guy they sent when a deal stalled, when the board got cold feet, when a client needed a handshake instead of a wireframe, when results mattered more than polish. But results don't impress people like Alan. Pedigree does. Kendra will be taking over your accounts, he added, almost as an afterthought. She's Ivy League, speaks their language. I nodded again. Kendra had shadowed me for 2 months. I let her. She took notes, asked questions. She thought it was mentorship. It was succession. The room had glass walls everyone could see in. That was the point. A public execution in a private box. 2 months ago, they cheered when I landed the Swiss merger deal. Today, they wouldn't make eye contact. I packed my things in silence. A leather notebook. A ceramic mug that read, "Closer, not a talker." A photo of my wife and me in Florence. A folded paper. My community college diploma, still tucked in the notebook's back cover. Flashback. My mother handed me that diploma through the kitchen window. She was still in her food service uniform. Her hands smelled like bleach and fryer oil. You keep that close, Marcus. It cost more than you think. She worked 3 jobs to get me there. Cafeteria cook, night janitor, temporary staff in a nursing home. She didn't have a degree, but she had discipline. She had dignity. She taught me both. Back to now. Alan leaned forward. This is business, not personal. You're good at what you do, just not the image we want in boardrooms anymore. I looked at him for the first time since I walked in. He actually believed that clients care about where your degree hangs, not how you close them. That loyalty is less valuable than optics. He didn't realize who called me first. My wife had joined the deal announcement call via Zoom that morning. She was still on mute when I got pulled into the room. The laptop stayed open on my desk. She saw everything. I didn't wave, didn't say her name, just picked up my box, closed the laptop, and walked out. They didn't let me take my laptop, but I didn't need it. The deal didn't live in that machine. It lived in me. The elevator down felt slower than usual, as if the building itself was making me drag it out. When I stepped out into the street, I checked my phone. 1 missed call. Jonathan Merrick, Vault Cap Holdings, the client, the man behind the $90 million. I didn't call him back. Not yet. I walked 3 blocks east, found a bench facing a construction site, watched 2 guys in reflective vests hammering rebar into place. I pulled the mug from my box and held it in my lap. Closer, not a talker. Alan thought I was replaceable. He thought prestige outranked loyalty. He thought I'd trained Kendra out of kindness. He didn't know I still held the original MOU, the one Merrick signed over dinner at his house. He didn't know that before I inked the deal. I made one private promise to the client. And he sure as hell didn't know that my degree wasn't the only thing from that community college that came with weight. I didn't need to explain myself. I just needed to wait. They thought it was done. They thought they'd replaced me with someone newer, glossier, easier to market on LinkedIn banners and investor debt. They didn't know I was still the only one Jonathan Merrick trusted with. I sat in my home office the next morning with my mother's diploma frame in front of me. She'd passed 4 years ago. Kidney failure. Quiet. I'd spoken at her service. Told a story about how she used to wake me up at 4:15 a.m. to her clean classrooms before she clocked into the breakfast. We never talked about grades, just bills, rent, deadline. She never once asked about just whether I was showing up. I stared at the community college diploma like it was a war medal, because it was. She'd earned it. I'd just sat through the classes. I hadn't looked at it in years, but now it was everything they hated about. Alan wanted polish. He wanted MBAs with symmetrical teams that carried weight in hotel lobbies. He didn't want the guy who knew the janitor, who wrote code notes in ballpoint pen, who answered client texts at 3 a.m. without CCing the building. He wanted image, the contract with Vault Cap, the one I just landed for $1 million. They didn't even know the contract was. It was a memorandum of understanding, signed between Jonathan and me at his home in Rye. No legal execution yet, no internal countersign, and I held the only physical copy. I didn't tell them that. Didn't. Jonathan Merrick called again. I let it go to voicemail. Marcus, I heard what happened. I want to talk. Before I talk to your former employer. Call me, direct line, anytime. He sounded calm, too calm. I opened my personal drive, scanned the folders. Vault Cap merge, retained draft V3, retention clause, independentadvisory.pdf, MBH consulting, entity setup.docx. Everything was in place. They didn't even know I had an entity registered for situations like this. They didn't ask, because they didn't think people like me. Flashback. 2 years ago. Q4. December. Company in a cash flow crisis. Alan had just been promoted to CEO. Merrick was threatening to walk. I flew out solo. Took an Uber from the airport to Merrick's house. No legal, no deck, just me. And a promise. Let us prove we know what you're worth, I'd said over wit. Not what the market says, what we say. He didn't smile, just nodded. The deal that followed saved the company. Alan never mentioned it again. 6 months later, Alan started reducing my visibility. First, removing me from press kit. Then, streamlining our deal team structure. Then came Kendra, Harvard Business School, perfect teeth, fast learner. I'd been asked to let her shadow me, absorb the culture of closing. That's how they phrased it. I didn't object, didn't push back, just kept working. Until the morning I signed the $90 million term sheet and they fired me 30 minutes later. You're just not the image we want to scale with. That phrase stayed with me. Image, not performance, not loyalty, not impact. Image. I texted one person that morning, Frank Berman, a junior analyst I mentored 5 years, now working compliance at a Can you review a clause for me? I need to know if advisory status exempts board consent. He replied, Nate, if you hold the MOU and no countersign exists, you still control directionality. They can't execute without triggering exposure. Good. That's what I thought. I sat with that information. Didn't forward it. Didn't document it. Just let it settle. 3 emails from Vanessa in HR came in by noon. Please confirm return of all proprietary information. I responded with a simple sentence. All devices were surrendered in person. I hold no proprietary materials. Technically true. The materials I held weren't proprietary. They were personal, built over 11 years, stored on my own drive, annotated with handwritten insights, negotiated over whiskey and broken ribs and red-eye flights. No MBA teaches you how to close a deal after holding a client's hand at their father's funeral. No Ivy League course shows you how to read silence over a conference call. They teach technique, not trust. And trust was something I earned. VaultCap's executive assistant emailed me later that afternoon. Jonathan wants to meet privately. We'll send car if needed. No intermediaries. I replied one word. Yes. The next move wouldn't be loud, wouldn't be angry, wouldn't be dramatic. It would be precise. They thought they'd ended the story. They didn't realize I was the only one who knew how it actually began. The meeting wasn't at a law office, not a steakhouse either. Jonathan Merrick chose a bookstore. Back room. Soundproofed. No glass. No press. He poured coffee himself. No assistants. No security. You still drink it black, right? I nodded. The room smelled like old pages and dust polish. The table was nicked oak, not lacquered boardroom plastic. Jonathan didn't sit across from me. He sat beside me like we were working on something together. Because we were. Tell me everything. So I did. Not all of it. Just the pieces he needed. How Alan timed the firing 30 minutes after the announcement. How the phrase he used, community college, wasn't offhand. It was rehearsed. How they'd looped in Kendra to shadow the deal in its final stages. How they expected me to leave quietly. Jonathan listened with his hands folded. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said nothing for a long time. Then, do they know you still hold the only physical copy of the MOU? No. Do they know about our call 3 weeks ago? About the contingency clause you suggested? No. Do they know VaultCap hasn't signed the execution papers? They fired me before checking. He leaned back and smiled, not friendly. Something colder. Perfect. I didn't need to ask what he meant. VaultCap's MOU wasn't binding. They hadn't wired anything. They were still in optional territory. And the clause I added, the one granting me limited rights as non-exclusive advisor during the negotiation phase, still valid, still untouched. You ready to move? Jonathan asked. I nodded. Not because I was eager, because I was prepared. We formed a new entity, MBH, Strategic Advisors. Quiet, private, not public-facing. VaultCap retained MBH as sole advisor for the continuation of the deal. Alan wouldn't know, not at first. The retention would hit their inbox via the client's legal team. Standard language, just new contact points. My name, not Kendra's. Later that week, I met with Samir and Alana, 2 former team leads who'd been restructured 6 months prior. They thought I wanted to reminisce. I handed them NDAs. They signed without asking. They still remembered. How I covered bonuses when the budget dried up. How I worked their accounts during paternity leave and chemo appointment. How I never asked for credit. What are we building? Alana asked. Nothing public, I said. Just something better. The next day I got a message from Frank, the compliance analyst I'd reached out to before. He'd reviewed deeper into the VaultCap materials. There's a line in the MOU Alan never saw. If they execute the deal without acknowledging advisory conflict, it triggers a breach clause. Is it enough to stall them? More than stall. It opens them to litigation. I didn't celebrate. I printed the clause, filed it, went back to work. Meanwhile, Kendra posted a selfie on LinkedIn. Proud to be leading our firm's largest cross-border integration to date. Thankful to stand on the shoulders of a legendary team. I wasn't tagged. Of course not. But I wasn't angry. Because she'd posted it before the client called back. VaultCap paused all internal transition meetings. Official reason, internal restructuring review. Unofficially, me. Jonathan's second email to Alan's executive team was short. Please route all communications through MBH until further notice. Marcus Hale is point of contact. That's when Vanessa from HR emailed again. Please confirm that you are not in possession of client documents or internal contracts that originated during your employment. I replied, I am not in possession of any company property. True. The deal never belonged to the company. Not legally, not emotionally, not ethically. Friday, 6:32 p.m. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Marcus, it's Alan. His voice wasn't smug anymore. I think we need to talk. I don't. Look, maybe we can find a solution here. You already chose your solution. I hung up. Not to be dramatic, just to be clear. That weekend I sat in my garage going through old boxes, found the mug again. Closer, not a talker. Set it on my desk. Let it look at me while I worked. They thought I was gone. They thought pedigree had replaced performance. They thought silence meant surrender. They forgot silence is where I do my best work. Monday, 9:17 a.m. Alan received the first email. Subject line, RE advisory status conflict. Urgent review requested. No warning, no greeting, just a single PDF attached. Advisory conflict clause, Section 7C. In the event that advisory oversight shifts outside of the originating firm, and such shift is unacknowledged by said firm, the counterparty reserves the right to freeze, restructure, or reroute execution based on realignment. Translation? VaultCap just froze the deal. Alan didn't reply, didn't forward. He sat on it for 4 hours, hoping it would disappear. By the time legal got involved, it was already out of his hands. Kendra emailed Jonathan directly that afternoon. Hi, Jonathan. Just looping back on the next steps. Happy to reschedule our integration workshop. His reply was 4 words. You're not on it. The next morning, VaultCap issued a formal notice through counsel. Pending completion of review, VaultCap will suspend collaboration with Argent Bridge Capital and transition all engagement protocols to MBH Strategic Advisors. Alan still didn't understand. He thought it was a misunderstanding. He thought I'd blink. I didn't. Tuesday, 11:03 a.m. A second message hit his inbox. Subject, Notice of Potential Misrepresentation. It referenced Kendra's LinkedIn post, the one where she took credit for the deal. It included screenshots, timestamps, IP records from her edits, all archived, all cross-referenced with internal emails that had already been subpoenaed. They were never going to sue me. I hadn't broken anything. They just never read what they'd signed, never understood what I built, never thought someone without an Ivy League crest could outmaneuver them. Wednesday, 2:47 p.m. Vanessa from HR resigned. Official reason, personal. Unofficially, she saw the documents, the chain of emails, the meeting minutes where Alan said, he's a good operator, but optics matter. Kendra looks better on stage. She knew what was coming. Thursday morning, I posted one line on LinkedIn. Loyalty isn't a brand. It's a ledger. No names, no shade, just silence. Weaponized. It got 42,000 views in 36 hours. And 1 DM from a partner at a global consulting firm. We saw what you did. Let's talk. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I met with VaultCap's legal team to finalize the transfer terms. They offered me a desk in their office. I declined. My office is portable. Just send the numbers. They smiled. They understood. Meanwhile, Alan's phone wouldn't stop ringing. 3 clients asked for new representation. 2 board members requested a closed-door review. 1 junior associate leaked the Slack thread where Kendra referred to me as the legacy liability. She meant it as a joke. It read like a confession. Friday, 5:36 p.m. A journalist from Business Current reached out. We're hearing whispers about a mishandled cross-border deal. Can you confirm whether Argent Bridge lost VaultCap because of internal politics? I didn't respond. Didn't need to. They already knew. Alan sent a final message. Short. Desperate. Let's meet. Just you and me. I think we misunderstood each other. I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. No reply. No threat. No closure. Just silence. The kind that doesn't echo, because there's nothing left to bounce off. They'd tried to bury me for the sake of an image. Monday, 9 a.m. Alan walked into the executive boardroom already sweating. The quarterly review was scheduled for 10. He'd been calling for a week, leaving voicemails that said things like, "Just want to get ahead of any noise," and "Let's clarify the vault cap situation before the call." But there was only silence. And silence, when earned, is the loudest judgment of all. At 9:06, two board members stepped out of the room. No eye contact. One of them left her copy of the meeting agenda on the table. Item 3, client loss disclosure, vault cap. Item 4, interim strategy discussion. Alan read it 3 times, then sat down. Vault cap had gone public with the news that they had amicably transitioned advisory engagement to a firm aligned with long-term trust and continuity. They didn't need to. By Wednesday, 3 of Argent's largest accounts requested audits. 2 paused renewal. 1 firm, East Point Capital, had already set a meeting with MBH Strategic Advice. Kendra deleted her link. Too late. It had already been quoted in Business Current in a piece titled "Optics versus Outcomes: Why Firms Still Undervalue Loyalty." They included a line from one of her Slack messages. "It's not about skill, it's about fit. No one wants a guy who went to City College leading a global finance call." That same day, East Point's managing partner, whom I'd once helped through a brutal post-divorce valuation review, called me. "I'm thinking about moving everything to your side. You still have your notes from that 2019 workaround, right?" I did. I always did. Alan tried one last move. He forwarded my signed NDA with a highlighted clause. "No solicitation of clients for 12 months post-termination." He attached a short message. "Would hate to make this legal, Marcus." "Let's be adults," I replied. "You signed the vault cap waiver yourself. Paragraph 8, retention flexibility clause. You asked me to draft it." No follow-up. Thursday, 4:48 p.m. A junior associate forwarded me a message from internal IT. It was titled, "Urgent. CRM access logs flagged for review." Turns out, while restructuring the deal teams, someone forgot to revoke my access. Not that I needed it, but the system kept flagging it anyway, and Alan didn't like things he couldn't control. Friday morning, an email from Argent's general counsel went out. Effective immediately, Alan Pierce is stepping down as CEO of Argent Bridge Capital. The board has accepted his resignation. Transition details forthcoming. I didn't cheer, didn't post, didn't forward the news. I just stared at my screen for a while, then opened my inbox. 10 unread messages, 3 new client requests, 1 speaking invitation from the community college I graduated from. I said yes to the last one. They asked me to give a talk on unseen leadership, quiet strategies in loud rooms. I said I wasn't much of a speaker. They said that's why they wanted me. That evening, I walked into my new office. Not flashy, not oversized. A single window, 1 solid desk. I set the mug on the shelf. Closer, not a talker. The plaque on the wall wasn't a diploma. It was a copy of the MOU, framed, dated, unsigned by them, signed by me. Kendra sent one last message a week later. "I'm sorry, I didn't know they'd use me like." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, because there was nothing left to say. They built a stage and forgot who built the floor beneath it. They thought replacing me was a move forward. They didn't realize it was the first brick pulled from. 2 months later, I stood at the front of a classroom with 37 students. They weren't dressed for optics. No polish, no designer ambition. Just tired eyes, worn backpacks, and the kind of quiet intensity you only see in people who have to get it right the first time. City Valley Community College. Same classroom I sat in 21 years ago. Same cracked floor tile in the corner near. Same smell, old plastic, cheap carpet, and ambition. I didn't prepare a speech. Didn't bring slides. Didn't wear a blazer. I wore what I always wore when I closed the big one. White shirt, dark tie, sleeves. They told me to come talk about leadership, but you already know what. No applause, just listening. That was better. I told them one story. About a man who built something, got erased, then outlived the people who replaced him. I didn't say names, didn't show documents, didn't talk about deals, just talked about quiet work, about being overlooked until you're indispensable, about building systems no one notices until they're broken, about how it feels when someone looks down on you because your degree came from a building next to a 7-Eleven. Afterwards, a girl came up to me. Couldn't have been older than 19. I work nights at CVS. This helped. I just nodded. Didn't need to say more. 1 week later, a news story broke. Argent Bridge was being investigated by the SEC for misleading investors during international negotiations. Someone had leaked the emails, the Slack messages, the internal memos. I wasn't surprised. Alan was quoted once. "We were misled by internal process breakdown." I didn't respond, didn't post, didn't share. My inbox was full. Old colleagues asking if I had openings, clients wanting long-term contracts, recruiters offering roles with titles I used to be denied. I declined most of them, told them I had enough. Not just financially, but finally, enough respect to build on my own. I sat at my desk that Friday morning. The office was quiet, just the hum of machines, the smell of paper and leather and black coffee. I took the mug off the shelf, closer, not a talker, filled it, sat back, watched the sun push through the window blinds and clean lines. I opened one last email from the Dean of City Valley. We'd like to rename our business lecture series after. We're calling it The Hail. You don't have to speak, just be part of the... I stared at it for a long time, then typed, I'd be honored. They fired me for the way I looked on paper. They thought pedigree could replace performance. They thought I was expendable. But they didn't understand what lives in silence, what loyalty looks like when it has no brand, what legacy sounds like when no one's clapping. Just remembering, I wasn't loud, I wasn't political, I wasn't elite, I was just necessary. Turns out some things don't come with a pedigree, like loyalty, grit, and memory. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.